Hi, my name is Julia Mears Chase. I'm a medical doctor and I provide care to the elderly. Um, how I started my profession was actually very serendipitous. I went to medical school in Trinidad in 2001 and I returned to Barbados in 2004 where I did my clinical stretch of the training at the QEH Hospital, Queen Elizabeth. I would have graduated in 2007 and I did my internship for 1 year at QEH Hospital. And this is where I can really say that I first encountered care of the elderly. Um, they, and it stood me in good stead. Right? I, on graduation and completion of my internship, I got a job at the Ministry of Health in the geriatric hospital. And this is where I really honed my skills for care of the elderly. There, I was a senior house officer. Duties were very varied, but mainly it was admitting and caring for elderly patients who were unable to live independently in their community or who had insufficient social support at home to allow them to remain in their homes. And many of the times these would not be sprightly elderly patients, but you would find that they had a great disease burden. So they had many of the diseases that you would go to a doctor for: hypertension, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol. Many of them were amputees. But one of the main things I can say that really threatened their longevity and their ability to live independently would be immobility, problems with their own mobility. And I find that once you have age and you gotten to the point where you can't move, that is when you are really at risk of having poor health. So we sought to provide comprehensive care. We all age. If we live long enough, we are going to get old, right? And that is a blessing. But what concerns us about aging, and I think what is foremost in all of our minds, is how will we age? Will our bodies sustain us? Many people who are young worry about what quality of life they would have as they age. So as you are young and you look after your health, you kind of wonder, what are the things I am supposed to be doing every day to keep me healthy so that I can enjoy the period when I am older? And that's a question that I get a lot when I do my clinics, young clinics, for the younger generation. And it all comes down to a more holistic care of your values of living. One, I would say the first thing is your diet. Food is medication, and there are a lot of medicinal foods out there. And one of the things that the medical fraternity now struggles with are the non-communicable diseases. They tend to shorten your lifespan, and they also tend to cause you to not have as full and a rich and as active a life as possible, right? So the aim is to try to prevent those, or if you're already affected by the non-communicable diseases, for you to make sure that they're under control. And there are some things that you can do. There's a lot of information out there concerning your nutrition and your diet. If you're struggling and you find that you are, for instance, overweight, obese, stressed, you need to have a regular consultation with your doctor. It's advised that even in your 20s that you have an annual physical. You go, you sit, and you talk to your doctor, you get your blood pressure checked, you check your weight, you check to make sure you have diabetes. If you are a female, you look after your women's health needs. So you get your regular breast exam, your pap smears, etc., to ensure that you're healthy. In that way, even if you have or you develop some kind of illness, you will be able to catch it at an earlier stage where interventions will more likely than not be successful, right? So what do? We are created to move. And another tenet of having a healthier aging process is to always remain active. So it's recommended that you exercise 150 minutes a week is what the guidelines would say medically. But basically, I believe that you should exercise and incorporate exercise throughout your day. So whatever you can do to keep your body active, it is recommended. So if you can walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, you can do that. Go for a walk throughout your community. Swimming. Barbados has an abundance of beaches, but somehow Barbadians seem to be very reluctant to learn how to swim. There are plenty swim coaches around. You can learn how to, once you are moving your body, and I find that for me, swimming is a really relaxing activity. It relieves stress. And if you have problems, particularly with your joints or if you are overweight, swimming is an excellent way to exercise. And I wish you would utilize the beautiful beaches we have. Tourists spend thousands of dollars to come here to enjoy them. And there are some Barbadians that don't even go to the beach once a year. So to have more beach type activities would be good. Yoga, stretching, Pilates, going to the gym, all of those things are forms of exercise. But we can go back to the village type exercises. When I was younger, I would walk through my gap and I would be able to see people playing road tennis. There would be football, there would be cricket on the street. Now you realize that as you walk through, the younger children are engaging that way. They're probably inside on a tablet, in a computer, on their phones. Less encouraging forms of physical activity, and that's considered to be sedentary. That leads in the future to heart disease and poor health. So if we can get our young peoples back into the community playing, then it would help. And in a way, this can also assist the elderly, right? Because if you have a fitter young generation, you also have opportunity for the elderly to become integrated into what they're doing, right? So you might be outside with a road tennis racket, and granddad might pass by and tell you, boy, you youngster, what you doing? You know, you're holding it right, and he might be able to get a hit or two off of the racket, right? That is physical activity for him. So to build a more community story would assist. But I'm going to come back to that in a little while. So it's a joy and a privilege to look after the elderly. One of the things that I find that contribute to longevity would be community, the sense of community. Many of us are very anxious. If you work a number of years, you want to retire, and you find that sometimes when people retire, they have absolutely no plans. At retirement, I think that one of the things that would be nice to consider as you plan your retirement is, in general, what is your purpose, right? There must be something that you're passionate about. There must be something that you're willing to do or you want to explore. And I find that one of the things that threaten the elderly in terms of their cognitive functions will be staying at home very isolated. Social isolation is not your friend, right? If you can get, and this is where I find that the church bodies and community organizations will be more helpful. Because if you can get a group of individuals just embracing the elderly in the community, then we can get some true progress, right? There's nothing wrong with a group of church friends coming over to visit. In a lot of the metropolitan societies, I know particularly in Japan, um, they have a really high rate of centenarians per capita. That is how many people will actually live to 100 within a particular group. And I knew that there were a lot of scientists, particularly anthropologists, who would study the lifestyle. Anytime there's a big community with a lot of people turning 100, they will go and look and see at their lives what are some of the things that would have contributed to their longevity. And one of these things is staying committed to the community. When they got older and they left formal work, they sought on a daily basis as elderly people to connect with one another. They not only connected financially, but they connected in a very physical form. So they would meet at somebody's house. Everybody will cook together, bring whatever you needed to bring. They would prepare a meal. They would fellowship. They would play games, and it gave them a sense of community. They would pray. They would do the Bible study. That was part of their community. We don't see that so much here, right? So outreach for any church or organization is very important. And to have outreach, you need volunteers. And most of the time, if you're in the working world, you're employed, you're stuck to a job schedule, and volunteering will be difficult because you have to do it in your free time, balance your work, your life, etc. Well, once you're retired, you can feel free to set aside a couple hours a week to donate your skills and talents to the ministry, right? There are some people who are skilled differently. The body is made up of many parts. And you might be particularly gifted in art, or you might be particularly gifted in physical movement. There's nothing wrong with starting a group, meet at the beach, the church, wherever might be safe, and start line dancing, start Tai Chi, start any form of physical activity. You can start an art group, and in that you get to fellowship with one another, and you try to keep these activities healthy. So you don't, bring the unwanted, even if you're having snacks or whatever, things that would not be healthy in terms of the diet, but you encourage water, you cement the idea of health, right? You talk about the things to make you healthy. You're not just healthy physically, healthy spiritually. So we are implored in John 15:12. I'm reading from the Amplified Version. This is my commandment, that you love and unselfishly seek the best for one another, just as I have loved you. No one has greater love nor stronger commitment than to lay down his own life for his friend. And I think that anyone who is looking to care for the elderly, that Bible verse should be the one that kinds of leads your heart more so. Because everyone knows that caring for an elderly person, particularly if they're ill with multiple illnesses, there can be a lot of suffering involved. And it can be physically taxing, can be emotionally difficult, and a lot of caregivers suffer a large burden that sometimes can actually lead them to poor health themselves and burnout. And this is why the care of the elderly is not only family based but community based, because just like children, it's going to take a village to care for our elderly. This is going to become very important because Barbados is an aging society. There are actually more older persons in the population than younger persons, and that's why recently we've been seeing all kind of discussions concerning social security and the benefits, because we are getting to the point where we have more aged persons in the population than births, right? So we need to get back to an active community plan. and that starts with the family. Because of the history of families, you find that not every family is a cohesive unit. You find that families have been fractured and broken by all the things that are not really healthy, right? There are discards and disputes over many issues, and fundamentally, you find that there's no healing after these disagreements. You find that there's a measure of unforgiveness after these disagreements. And some people will actually harbor thoughts. Wait. You hear, during arguments, sometimes you pass through districts and they're having arguments, and you say, wait, they get old, right? So there's this almost intent that I am going to have a sense of revenge on you. I'm not going to care for you when you get elderly. And that is a mentality that needs to stop. We are Christians, we're asked to forgive, and it makes no sense harboring bitterness and unforgiveness in your heart. So if you have an elderly parent, an elderly grandparent, for whatever reason things didn't go well while you were growing up, try to seek to restore the relationship. Yes, it is a two-way street, but you make your own effort and your peace, okay, with it. Sometimes it's not to become friendly, but sometimes it's just to give up the emotional burden that will cause stress in these difficult situations. Sometimes it's for your own health that you need to just forgive. Understand that these people, when they were younger, yes, they're your parents, but they too had their own path and charts to make, and they too were God's children. Some of them strayed. They strayed from the word. They strayed from the Christian upbringing. They made mistakes. And in the church, we know these people as sinners. So it is your duty to continue to pray for them, to pray for their spiritual health, to ensure that they return and restore relationship with God, and where available, just evangelize. Okay, bring Christ back to them, and you will realize that then, with the sense of healing, that caring for the elderly might not be as difficult. Patience is the utmost quality that you can have. For many elderly people, they slow down physically, so they can't walk as fast. Sometimes cognitively, they might be sharp in terms of the thought, but thinking and adjusting and making new decisions might be difficult for them, particularly if they are affected by conditions that affect the brain: Alzheimer's, stroke, Parkinson's disease, any of those more familiar and common your neurocognitive disorders, right? And there might not be, according to the young people, tracking as fast. So you need to be patient. When you go to deal with the elderly, you set aside proper time, right? It cannot be in a rush fashion, because then they get the sense of you rush, you don't care for them, they're a burden, and that puts a psychologically burden on the elderly, and they give up. They give up on life. And we want to be able to protect them, because yes, they were useful in their younger days. Many of them gave and served in various aspects of the community, but when they get older, sometimes because of lack of involvement, you would realize that they feel a little bit useless, set aside, worthless, and many of them will start to suffer with depression once that mindset kicks in. So it's our duty to take the time, make the sacrifice to show the love, okay? And love means spending time with them. Love means approaching them gently. Love means listening to their concerns. Sometimes they just need someone to sit and talk to them, right? Someone to hold their hand, someone to say that I still care. And you will find that because of the busyness of life, sometimes we don't set aside time to just be our neighbor's keeper. So you live in a community and you have an older um, person living in your community, set aside some time on Saturday evenings, Sunday evenings, whenever you're free, to just go and check in, right? Check in, find out truly how they are. Many people will ask in passing, how are you? But they don't really stop to listen to the answer, right? It's just a form of being polite. But go and really seek, find out how they are, find out what their needs are, find out how you can serve them. And once we get back to that as a basic tenet, we being good neighbors, we can. And in terms of family members, try to always include the elderly. Family holidays, special occasions, they are always a good time to include the elderly. It is very interesting because I remember one of the times that we would get when I was the officer at geriatric, I should say. One of the times that we would get a spike in applications or a spike in emergency admissions around crop over, believe it or not, and for Christmas. And that is because the younger folks in the family would have activities planned, they would have guests, and all of a sudden, the elderly care, the burdens of the elderly will become too much. They will get sick maybe at an inopportune time, and that might require even assessment at the accident and emergency of the QEH. But that's not the problem. The problem is after that assessment and the patient is fit to go home, you would find that no one comes to collect them. And that is the most heartbreaking thing you can find. As an admission officer, many days I sat beside the bedside of the patients and I listened to them complain. Why, after I do so much for these children, they just left me here, right? That is the most heartbreaking thing you can have, and you can see the sadness, and you have to wipe away the tears, and you have to deal with the emotional fallout of the regret, right? Because it's a holistic hospital, there is a social work department, and I think they still have only 2 medical social workers attached to the big system, so their workload is quite a lot. We're hoping, and I'm still hoping, even although I've moved on, I'm still hoping that that department could be better resourced, and that you can add not just a psychiatrist, but a psychologist to the armory of the elderly care facilities, and not just the government facilities, but access to the nursing homes, because many of these elderly people do have trauma. Once you have to make, once they're institutionalized, many of the elderly people do suffer some level of trauma for having to be institutionalized. It is unavoidable. They feel a certain way, and the emotional health would definitely need to be addressed, right? So counseling would help. Spiritual counseling helps. Sometimes just letting them talk about it in their groups. It helps them to cope with having to be away from the family. Being away from the family, it isn't a sense of abandonment. If you know that your elderly person has a medical condition that you can't handle at home, it is life-threatening, and you have to place them into a nursing home to get the best care, that is what is best for them. And it might be a hard emotional decision, but if it is necessary, it is necessary. But luckily, this is not the majority of the elderly in the country, right? These are the ones that have special circumstances, but it is not the majority of the elderly. So I don't want you to feel as though, well, I had to put my elderly person in a nursing home, so I have failed. That is not the message here, right? Your situation is a special situation. It would have been assessed on a one-on-one basis, and it's the best decision that you would make for your elderly relative, particularly if they have a whole host of medical diseases that require 24-hour nursing care for their safety and their well-being. So if you are the caregiver of an elderly person, where do you start? Well, in general, we will start with, yes, the diet, the exercise. You keep them actively engaged. You try to prevent social isolation by providing community for them. But you also have to be observing their behaviors and observing their physical function as a marker of their health. So if you realize that you're with mom and she or dad and he's a little bit forgetful, and you are concerned that he's getting confused more and more, and not just the odd, oh, he forgot where he put the keys or he forgot the name of a particular child, but if you realize that this is affecting his function, the first place you should start with is his general doctor. You take him for a checkup and you discuss with the doctor what your concerns are. And that should lead to a dementia screen. And dementia is a disorder which occurs in the brain for several reasons, but it affects the way how you function. So the way how you think, and many of the dementias lead to memory loss, but they also lead to loss in physical function. So you're not able to feed yourself at the end of the day. Sometimes you lose your mobility, you lose weight, and this is particularly true for the Alzheimer's type dementias, and this is particularly true for the vascular type dementias. And vascular or mixed dementia is very popular, as well as Alzheimer's, in our community because of the high burden of heart disease. Just as how the heart is affected by atherosclerosis and high cholesterol levels, and circulation might be affected to the heart, to the kidneys, to the legs of your physical body, your circulation to your brain is also affected, and that might lead to dysfunction in the way that the different areas of the brain are supposed to work, particularly your white matter and your substructures. So you will end up having physical issues with your brain, which will manifest in symptoms like all diseases. So the best thing to do for you to do is to start with a doctor's checkup, right? Some of this might include some scans. You can get a lot of screening tools to determine if what you're presenting with in terms of memory loss actually reached the diagnostic stage of dementia or Alzheimer's. Your general practitioner might be able to, should be equipped to do that. If there's any need for any screening, any CT scan, any specialist intervention, then your doctor will be able to refer you to the relevant specialist doctor to assist you with your diagnosis, right? So you go to the doctor and you realize, okay, I have my parent and they are now diagnosed with Alzheimer's. What am I to do? First thing you need to do is to go home and have a family meeting about the support. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, many people are still able to make decisions about themselves and what they want to see in their future. It is at this time that you're supposed to be able to document the wishes. Talk to them. Don't keep it as a secret. Talk to them. Find out what they really want moving forward, right? And put a plan in place. Make sure that as a family that you're committed to facing it together with one another. Now, if you are not in a family network where you have a lot of support, this is where then you will need the assistance of the government agencies or private agencies. The government agencies tend to provide these services most of the time free cost. So if you're an only child and you have your own family, or you are here and your sisters are abroad and nobody can come in to assist you with the care of your elderly parents, the Barbados government has tasked the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, who have the presiding control over the National Assistance Board. And the National Assistance Board has two programs that can assist with the care of the elderly. The first program is a more task-oriented program. This is what Barbadians know as the home help program. So for home help, you can refer yourself. If you're elderly, you live alone, you can call the National Assistance Board. You can ask for a supervisor. They will take basic information. They will schedule an interview and they will come out to you to assess your needs. The home help workers, like I said, are task oriented, so they come in, they cook, they clean, they do the laundry, they assist with bathing and dressing, the hygiene needs of the elderly. The home help will also package the meals for the day for cooking, and they will also ensure that the elderly person gets basic activities. Hair care, I understand that they would wash and plait your hair if you're a female, and there are at least 4 barbers attached to the unit, which will, if you're a female and you want to keep your hair low, they will bring in a barber for you. If you're a male, you know, your beard and stuff will be kept. Home help also will do your, if you're in diapers, they will change your diapers, etc. What home help is limited in doing is the medication. But the National Assistance Board employs a couple of nurses who are registered nurses for the Barbados Nursing Council, and they are tasked with putting out the medication. The family member is responsible for ensuring that the patient takes the medication as prescribed. The home health officers, they are not nurses, so they're not cleared to actually give you your medication, but they can remind you to take your medication. So it's very important that when we get home help, that we understand the boundaries and the limitations based on what they are supposed to do, and don't expect, still chip in, because there are some areas and lines that they will not be able to cross in their job functions. So you apply for your home help, you get your home help. Unfortunately or fortunately, the program runs in, I believe, 2 shifts. It's 9 to 1. I think it's 1 to 5, they told me, in the afternoon. So you're not going to get a whole day. You're not going to get a whole day of home help, so you need to adjust. And the supervisors who assess the case will also tell you how many days a week of home help you would need. So you might not be able to get the 24-hour, 7 days a week comprehensive care, so the families are still asked to chip in. Out of this program came a second program called the Companion Program. This is also delivered by the National Assistance Board. The Companion Program is slightly different because whereas it's not task-oriented, it is designed to keep the cognitive function and the company of the elderly. If you remembered early in the talk, I told you that one of the things that really lead to poor health is loneliness. Loneliness and social isolation. It leads to depression, and it can actually take as much as 15 years off of your lifespan, right? Elderly people really do need social connection. So in an effort, the government has sought to employ persons that will come and sit and read with you, play board games, play chess, and whatever you need done to keep you active, read your Bible, whatever the client requires, they're even authorized to run very light errands. If you have a corner shop in the village and you need something collected, they can do that for you. But they won't like go to the supermarket and shop and all of that for you. You need your family members for that. In addition to that, I understand that the National Assistance Board also provides a beautification team for the home. So home health will not be able to change a light bulb, and the companion care might not be able to cut the grass on the outside. But once you are a client of the National Assistance Board, they do have officers that can come out and deal with minor problems, keeping the environments clean. And that is also important to the NAB workers who might have to go in the backyard maybe to hang laundry or whatever, is to make sure that their work environment as well as the client's living environment is safe for them, right? So I believe that that's the government assistance program you can have. It's all based out of the National Assistance Board. Another function of the nurses of the NAB is not just the medication. If, for instance, you have an elderly patient who's part of the home health program and they do have wounds or dressings, ulcers to do, the nurses will do their dressings or their ulcers as needed, and under the guidance of the doctor. Nurses also assess you. So if you're there at home and you're not feeling well, and the NAB supervisor is aware of the fact that you are in the program and you're not feeling well, the nurse assess you, and if need be, the appropriate medical help is given. Either they call the doctor or you might have to go by ambulance depending on how serious your case is to the hospital, but the nurse will assess you and provide that care. I also understand that there are physiotherapists associated with the NAB as well. So if the nurse believes that you are a case or you're recovering from a stroke and you require physiotherapy for any reason, that there's access to that via the NAB and the government. So these are good resources to have, but as you will be aware, there's such dire need that is a possibility that the wait times might be a little protracted to get into the programs. So there's also the Caribbean Home Health Agency. That is a private agency, so the services will be paid services, and it also provides nursing care. So if by any chance you need a nurse for a short period or a longer period, you can contact this agency. You will get nursing care. They provide physiotherapists as well. They provide speech therapists. There are a range of services. They also provide monitoring for individuals who are at home. So you heard about the geo technology, the bracelets and the watches. So that will ensure that the patient is safe in the home. If they've fallen, that they can get help in a timely fashion, and that their home remains as safe as possible. Apart from those agencies, there are a number of other agencies that you can call. I had mentioned earlier that the caregivers burden. Now, too often, as an officer at the hospital, you would admit a family, and you would hear, "Well, doc, I have 4 children, but only this one is look at me." And that one child is tasked with the 24-hour care of a patient with severe disability. And the siblings, for whatever reason, some of them will find it easy to maybe donate some money to buy some Pampers or whatever the immediate need is, but giving of their time and relieving their sibling, that seems to be a harder challenge. So you find that this one sibling has to cope, or this one grandchild has to cope with the care of the elderly. That becomes a burden to them. They too need a break. Many of them get burnout. Many of them emotionally have to deal with the fallout of losing, especially in the case of Alzheimer's, losing the person you know and love even before death ensues. And just a mental break will be necessary. And when persons who are caregivers get this vulnerable, some of them reach out because of the wait times at some of the institutions. They get very desperate, and that is where you find they need to leave them at an institution like the QEH for care, because they figure they're in the hospital, they're going to get the best care there. But there's a little flawed thinking in that belief, because many of the patients in the QEH, as you would know as a general doctor, you come in with all kind of life-threatening infections. So to have a relatively frail elderly person in a constant environment where there are bugs around, they might not have come in with a pneumonia, but they might be bedded beside somebody who has a pneumonia that's coughing, and you can guarantee that their health will be challenged. So the QEH is not the best place for care. It is an acute care institution, which means that it deals with illness on a short-term basis, but it is not set up for chronic care. So it is not the ideal place to leave any elderly person for a protracted amount of time to live. If you are in a bind, many of the private nursing homes provide a sessional type care for a month, where they would admit your family member and give them the very best care for that 1 month. For some of my clients who are apprehensive, who about needing nursing home placement for various reasons, sometimes what I ask them to do is to go around, get a list of homes. The list of homes, I believe, would be on the Ministry of Health website, under, I think, is Care of the Elderly on the website. Get a list of homes. Go around, call the owners, ask if you can view the facility, right? Go to the facility, and if you can, I'm sure that there is some resident that would tell you if they enjoy it, right? You can also find a range of services and find the one that you are comfortable with. I remember personally, I was an officer at the hospital, and my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was affected by Alzheimer's. And up top of that, she had a stroke. So it was then physically difficult, even although it's my mom, her sister, and her brother, it became very difficult to deal with her, because she got to the stage where she needed 24-hour care. And as a young officer, it was very difficult. I decided that it was very difficult, but to get the care she needed, in the end, she needed to go to a home. Because first we tried in-home care, that went well, but once her mobility failed and she started to fall in the home, we needed a safe environment for her. And we did the same thing. We went to a number of homes, and we placed her in one that we were comfortable with. We visited regularly. One of us visited her every day. And that is important. It wasn't the same grandchild, it wasn't the same child, but we guard against the sense of abandonment. And it is difficult. But when you are comfortable that your elderly person is getting the best care, you can look at them and see that they're doing well, that they're happy and they're thriving, it makes the decision to put them in to long-term care a little easier, right? But you have to give them the best opportunity and do what is best. And yes, it is hard emotionally, but as a family, if you have to take that decision, support each other. There are some days I remember going up to the home to look for Granny, and she was not having a particularly good day, right? And I would always tell, because my aunt or my mom or somebody would call me to let me know your grandmother not having a good day, what you're gonna do. And half of the time it was just sitting with them, talking to them about the disease process and letting them know that these times would happen, and checking back on her frequently, because just because at visiting she wasn't having a good time, quite often the way how Alzheimer's is an hour later you call back and she's perfectly fine, but you are home having a whole freak out because of this one experience that you would have seen earlier up in the day, right? But it's very important. Most of all of the homes must comply to the standards of the Ministry of Health. There are inspectors that are particularly dispatched to ensure that the running of the home complies with the standards, and there's always a recourse for complaints, right, via the homeowner. Discuss with them first, and then the Ministry of Health, if you think that there are serious violations of safety or if there are any incidences of elder abuse, there's always a way that you can discuss your grievances. So anytime you go to the home, you make sure that there are clear documented policies on this type of treatment. So what I want to talk about now is how the church can assist. The church is an organization, yes, but it's a body and a fellowship, and it has a key role. Okay, we can assist by lending our time and volunteering to many of these associations, but we can do things on our own as well. On the aspect of the caregiver, we can be our brother's keeper as well. There are a number of associations that are willing to outreach, make sure that we have educated congregations. So when it comes to diabetes care, Alzheimer's care, the Barbados Alzheimer's Association, the Barbados Association of Palliative Care, some of our members are actually members of those associations. So if we can get more information sharing, it would be helpful, so that we don't just come home with the prayer, but we come home with practical Christian solutions as to how to help our elderly patients. Pastoral care, that is critical. If you are isolated and you're a caregiver, please reach out to your pastor. You need to cover your home in prayer. You need to cover you with the spiritual supervision that you need. We need to make sure that we can check in on your mental health and that you are not in any way isolated, caring for your loved ones. The church is meant to be a body, it's meant to be a community. As you heard from the passage of scripture, we are to share one another's burdens. So if you belong to a church, there is no reason why you should feel isolated. As Christians, be willing to sacrifice that time, is service to God, to serve your fellow church members and to serve your brethren in the church. Okay? So you need to be able to volunteer and do as God would allow you to do, to be used, to serve. Every church has some manner of property. So my suggestion is to see the range of talents that you have within the church and plan activities for the elderly. It isn't that difficult. You can have readings, game nights, game evenings, whatever. Once they can come out and they're active and fit, you make sure that you can plan activities. Counseling services, Bereavement counseling, support groups, they are necessary. Many of the caregivers tend to go through a lot emotionally, and they can learn. They can learn from others who have been through, who have family members who've been through the same things. Sharing is caring. So um, just from keen observation, sometimes you're on the ward, you got caught or maybe working a ward and visiting hours have come. And you would not believe families that don't even know each other. Somebody's having a hard time. See a visitor weeping. You have them go over and give support. Man, don't worry. Today not such a good one, but she gonna be all right tomorrow. Or she would say, but I come here at lunchtime and she was good. I'm sure she's gonna be all right. Or I come here at lunchtime and he was, he ate then. And so that support is needed. They go through a lot and we need to be our brother's keeper, right? So if we can get some sponsored programs, some activities where we go, and remember, it is a privilege. It is a blessing. It should be reverenced to become old. Our old people are a source of wealth. They are a source of wisdom. And they have so much to give to the younger generation. There is not a struggle, there is not an obstacle that you have to face in your life that I am sure an older person has not gone through, has not triumphed, has not been successful with. We cannot let generational gaps continue in families. We see so many young people that appear to be lost, and we want to fix the youth. But we don't realize that to fix the youth, we have to tap into the source of wisdom that the Lord has naturally put there, which are the elders in our community. Many of the times during their lives, they didn't have the kind of technology that we had. But yet still they found answers to have a successful life, to have a meaningful life. And I really think that we need to get back to that. Because of everything that they have been through in life, once they stay true to their service to the Lord, I can tell you that their faith is deepened. And sometimes you as a young person might be going through something, and you've gone to bless an old person. And with the spiritual discernment that these elderly people possess, they can sense. And you end up being the one edified and lifted up after the visit. You came to bless them, and they have blessed you in such a rich way. So it is not just all one-way street. These old people are so blessed and so grateful that you would take your time out to come and serve them, that it makes you as an individual really feel as though you have done a good service unto God and unto man. So I don't want anybody to feel apprehensive. Spend time. It doesn't need any particular skill set. Go and sit and talk. Talk about the old time days. Talk about things that they enjoy. Positive mindset is key to living a long life. Most people who stay positive, engage in their faith, prayer, take time to just worship, take time to de-stress, to hand their cares over to the Lord in prayer, and have a sense of community, where they spend times with their friends, their loved ones, the ones who can find a purpose. Because if you're existing day to day and there's no purpose, the chances are you're going to give up on life fast. There are so many bad reports coming through. Sometimes you don't even want to listen to the news because of the things that you're hearing. But sometimes just having that positive conversation with a brother or sister can get you through a day of loneliness. So just to reiterate, good health, good elderly health, a diet strong in nutrition, as much physical exercise as possible, Avoid social isolation at all costs. Pay attention to your mental health. Pay attention to your physical health. If you have a condition that requires doctor's care and medication, getting your medical checkups and taking your medication for as long as you need that support is recommended, right? And then simply enjoying life. Find something fun to do every day. Find something, there must be something. And at the end of the day, just make sure that you rehearse at least 2 or 3 things that you're grateful to be alive to see. This provides you with a sense of purpose and a sense of health. Okay. Again, I am Dr. Julia Mears Chase. I am now the Director of Family Care Medical Services, and I do provide concierge care to the elderly and the young disabled. And I will leave my information with the church, and I am happy to assist anyone who requires my help.